This has been a spiritual journey for me.
Like you can have an idea, but how to accomplish it.
The campaign was entitled Right the Wrong.
All the little bits and pieces that go into that. Those things are important. As I say, you've got to get everything right to make it all come together.
Dépêchez-vous. Il y a du monde qui ne souffre pas seulement aujourd'hui, mais qui souffre aussi face à l'avenir. C'est le temps d'agir et de remplir la promesse que le Canada avait faite dans les années 60.
It was a priority for all of us. It was a passion for all of us. It was an amazing collaborative team.
Cette expérience partenariale a véritablement été incroyable. Et voici maintenant un aperçu de la passion constante qui fut présente derrière la scène. Les survivants canadiens de la thalidomide forment un très petit groupe. Ceux-ci sont dispersés à l'échelle du Canada et parlent 2 langues distinctes. It was difficult for us to have a voice with Canada and the Canadian government and to explain our crisis. Nous faisions face à différents obstacles. En tant que directrice générale de la CVT, il était également important pour moi que les survivants canadiens n'aient pas à s'exposer publiquement indéfiniment. For all of these reasons, I recognize the need for a public campaign. It would need a strong team and it would preserve the integrity and the dignity of the thalidomide survivors. En 2012, j'ai communiqué avec Stephen Rains afin d'entrevoir avec lui la possibilité de créer un comité de travail et ensemble nous avons envisagé les expertises nécessaires qui devaient se joindre à nous. Un brillant avocat canadien, Joe Fiorente, s'est joint à l'équipe et celui-ci nous a mis en contact avec Campbell Strategies, dont Barry Campbell, Christopher Halls et Nathalie Dash. Nous avons également recruté des professionnels exceptionnels tels que Shirley Ann Clayton, monteuse de films et éditrice, ainsi qu'April Belbeck, ergothérapeute et expert en planification de soins de vie. Et comme vous allez le voir, derrière la scène, d'autres personnes ont soutenu nos efforts et ont joué un rôle clé.
Our task force was an amazing group of people. We had the great privilege of having very smart, motivated, strategic people to work with. When Stephen Rains and I first discussed the situation of Canadian thalidomide survivors, we made a conscious decision early on that the story would always be told by the survivors, that the members of the task force would never give interviews, would never appear on camera. We would only work to develop a program and a campaign that allowed Canadians to understand what these survivors had endured and what their life looked like now 50-odd years later. In 1991, when the government announced emergency assistance payments, it required all Canadian thalidomide survivors to sign a full legal release, giving up the right to sue the government. And we realized that there was still an injustice here, that the 1991 payment was a paltry payment, it was an emergency payment, and it wasn't a solution. The way to get anything done was to present this case to the public of Canada and to try and build public opinion in a way that would put pressure on the government to do something about it.
My involvement with the thalidomide campaign, the thalidomide children, the thalidomide survivors, our thalidomide family goes back my entire life. My father had the privilege of representing many Canadian thalidomide then children back in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. And it was the passion of his professional life and one that he brought home to everyone in the family. My sister, my brother, and I were all intimately involved in his crusade. And of course my mother. After my father passed away, Mercedes approached me and she said, "Stephen, we are so appreciative and so thankful for everything that your father had done for so many of the Canadian thalidomide families. However, there are many, many, many families who your father did not represent. And in addition, there are many families that your father did represent, and the money is running out or has run out. Is there something we can do? And I spoke with Joe about it, and we decided that we would marshal the evidence, just as if we were going to go to trial, just as if we were going to go in a courtroom in front of a jury and tell the story. We hired a film editor, Shirley Clayton, who did a brilliant job, because we had more than 100 hours of video footage, and it had to be edited down in a compelling way that would be able to tell the story. And again, it had to be one consistent with what our theme was, which was a strong voice, an honest voice, a real voice, but one that was presented in a dignified way.
The film was made for a reason. The film was made to show people how the survivors were living and to inform Canadians of the reality of the situation, which was not good. I wanted to do whatever I could, and with the footage that Stephen had sent me and the wonderful interviews and the intimacy and we were let right into people's lives. I mean, I've cut a lot of documentaries in my life, like many, and most of them are very personal stories. But I mean, to see people let you into their bathrooms, what they have to go through in their daily life like that, that's very unusual. I mean, just the bravery of the people and the conviction that they must have had to allow the crews into that part of their lives. The most challenging part was what to leave out. How do you cut stories, you know? Everybody deserved their own film, really. Everybody's story was so moving and so compelling. And even when we made the first video, which I think is really good, at 31 minutes or around half an hour, that was seen as too long to have deputy ministers look at, or people that were influential. They won't give you half an hour, they'll give you 15 minutes.
The next stage of the campaign was the approach to the Canadian government, and this was very carefully orchestrated and detailed through our partners at Campbell Strategies.
My colleagues Chris and Natalie put in an extraordinary amount of time. I was just in and out as required, providing some strategic input, but the real hard slogging was done by Chris and Natalie and others who've been working with TVAC over the years. I took a look at the video, and without even finishing the video, I called Chris back into my office and said, we're going to do whatever this takes, we're going to do it pro bono, we're going to get the job done.
Like it took probably about a year's worth of work to figure out how to put this together. This issue is a 50-year-old issue. All of our villains are dead. There's nobody that is alive that is responsible for this anymore. It was difficult because you know, we had to create a campaign to get the attention of the public and government, and you know, we were starting at zero practically. This was not an issue on anybody's radar whatsoever. Everybody assumed it was resolved.
We threw every tactic in the toolbox at this one, I think. I put in, I don't know how many FOI requests to the federal government. I got thousands of pages from them. I have so many documents in my drawer in my office, and used that information, I think, quite well in our campaign in order to affect our strategy. So I used it to improve our strategy and to look at how the government had responded in the past so that we could change our strategy and tactics to get a different outcome. And of course, every government's different, but I think having that background knowledge was really useful. We did a lot more than our normal role, I would say, of lobbyist, including all the social media and website stuff. The campaign really couldn't just exist with us talking to the media. We needed something to bring in Canadians and get involved in this. So I became a website developer. My boyfriend was previously a web developer, so I brought him into this, and he did a lot of the work on creating our beautiful Right the Wrong website. But there was a lot of challenges with that, including it had to be in English and French, and I'm not a French speaker, so I spent nights at 3 in the morning talking to the French web developer in France who offered his time to help us to make this website. We put together YouTube videos, recreated an Email Your MP campaign, which was really popular and a lot of people took part in that. We had French and English petitions to give to the House of Commons, which we had thousands of people from across Canada and internationally writing in. Really, I think, gave a really cohesive feel to the campaign and got Canadians involved with it, not just reading it, but it gave them a way to be a part of the campaign.
Our focus now was going to be, how are we going to put the external pressure on the Canadian government to do what they're not doing naturally? I view the role of the Globe, and I know Mercedes does, and I know the rest of the task force does, as a critical partner in our campaign, because they gave us a courtroom. They gave us the courtroom we needed.
I was very lucky in the summer of 2014 when Stephen Rains contacted the Globe, and he sent me some DVDs, documentaries that showed the plight of the thalidomide survivors and the challenges they had every day. So when I met with Dennis Choquette, the national editor with Mercedes and her team, we were both of one when we said we commit. The way Mercedes was going to leave that room until we did commit. And we committed to finding the story as it stood that day, and then concluding ultimately what we could do about it. What is vital is that with thalidomide, after decades of waiting, surely the Globe and Mail could have the discipline and a timetable that would allow us to sit there and say, we will end this story when the story ends. If that takes 6 years, so be it. If it takes 6 months, so be it. And I think we went from the very first day of publication to the vote in the House of Commons, a unanimous vote in the House of Commons. What a rare thing that is today, in a matter of 8 days. We couldn't have predicted that, we weren't expecting that, but we were delighted to see it, and we were delighted to continue the pressure after the vote, so that those who knew that the vote was 256-0 recognized that the machinery of government could not stop that. All of Canada demanded it.
To have the support of the Globe and Mail in particular was amazing. Amazing. We got like, I don't know how many front page stories in a row. Ingrid Peretz was fantastic. Like, what a dedicated reporter to this. And, you know, full credit to them for really making this a national issue and bringing this to the attention of the world.
Un aspect très essentiel de mes reportages, c'était évidemment d'aller recueillir les témoignages et le vécu des survivants. D'abord, je tiens à remercier la CVT, puisque c'est grâce à l'association que j'ai pu rentrer en contact en large partie avec des survivants. Ensuite, il fallait évidemment avoir la confiance de gens qui vivaient avec les impacts de la thalidomide. Et donc, j'ai travaillé à établir une relation de confiance et heureusement, j'ai pu rencontrer du monde extraordinaire qui ont ouvert leur cœur et leur foyer pour que je puisse aller voir sur place comment c'était qu'on vivait dans le quotidien. Alors, ceci était un aspect primordial, absolument essentiel, parce que sans des témoignages personnels, je ne pouvais pas bien raconter ce qui se passait dans le vécu, évidemment. Et je sentais dans un sens que je n'avais que exposer, j'avais qu'à expliquer ça aux Canadiens, puis démontrer, regarder que tout le monde allait embarquer.
I was a member of Parliament and I was the health critic for the NDP. We were the official opposition in Parliament. I started thinking about what we could do in Parliament and the idea of the NDP presenting what we call an opposition day motion. The first task was for me to go to our own party, you know, my own caucus and the leader, and say, look, we need to bring this forward because it's very competitive. Everybody's got an issue, right? So I had to convince our folks first that we needed to bring it forward on the day we had allotted as a motion.
Mr. Speaker, the motion before us calls on the government to right the wrong of the tragic consequences that took place when in 1961 the Government of Canada approved the sale of thalidomide as a safe drug for the treatment of morning sickness for pregnant women.
I worked with Murray Rankin, who was I believe he was the justice critic at the time.
I think the most challenging part of it was to get your head around the enormity of the problem. Just to explain to the average person what the life of a person with thalidomide would look like. And it was a communication requirement to get people to understand the gravity of the problem, the seriousness, the immediate need of it. That to me was the hardest part. At an emotional level, we all could react to the people. We'd all seen pictures, but so few Canadians have actually known people with thalidomide. So the challenge was to make sure people on all sides of the House understood the need to do this. Not just in financial terms, but just at every level. Anyone who read the article that the Globe and Mail published last weekend would be moved, as we all are, by their story. They come to the people of Canada, they come to the government of Canada, and they say, help us. We need help.
My role was really to assess the individuals that have the survivors in order to be able to outline what their functional limitations are, what their impairments are, so that we could tell their story to Health Canada and to Canada about how these people have been aging with their disability and what sorts of limitations they've experienced as a result of having malformations and living with it for over 50 years. When Health Canada asked questions, we were on the line responding to them within, I'd say, minutes almost, and pulling together teleconferences. It was a priority for all of us. It was a passion for all of us. It was really a collaborative, an amazing collaborative team.
I made it very clear to our folks that we needed this motion to pass. We had to get the government to support it. This was not about embarrassing the government. This was actually about getting a resolution that was just and was fair. A motion, when it's passed in the House, is not binding, but it's an expression of the House, right? It carries weight, it carries influence. So we worded the motion very, and I actually went and spoke with the Minister of Health, Rona Ambrose, and talked to her about it, because I wanted to make sure that they would support the motion, right? It would have been a disaster if they hadn't.
Well, when I was health minister, there were some challenges we faced when we made the decision that we wanted to help the thalidomide survivors. And I've got to say, right from the beginning, I had the support of then Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and so that gave me the freedom to get to work immediately as the minister. But we were up against a timeline that was really tight. We wanted to deliver as quickly as we could the support that survivors needed. So we did very quickly, and I could say we did it in almost a few months, what probably would normally take a government about 2 years. But that only happened because of the goodwill between everyone. Between TVAC, Mercedes was a great leader to TVAC and for the movement, for myself, but also all the officials at Health Canada, the support of the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister. Everyone came together and said, get this done. And it was a huge amount of teamwork and collaboration. And so we were able to achieve success in a very short period of time. And I'm very proud of that.
A lot of people maybe assumed at the time, and it was a fear for us when we were going through it at the time, is that people would see the vote and be like, oh, it's done. They got their vote, it's done, like hurrah, they got a motion that says they're gonna get full support. But there was no dollar amount attached to that, there was no program, nothing. So that's really when the nitty-gritty part of the campaign started. There was still obviously a key media component to that, but the second half was more about meeting with decision makers, trying to encourage them to make good decisions, providing them with a ton of information. One of the key tactics that we use was setting up deadlines. So in order to put pressure on officials and decision makers, we would set a deadline. So we set a deadline, you need to have this done by then, we need an answer by this time. And it helped us to keep, I think, the government on track and put pressure on them to work quickly to get things done, but it also gave the media a deadline and something to look forward to. And when the government missed the deadline, like they did a couple times, then it puts pressure again, because the media's like, oh, they've missed the deadline, like what is the government doing, why are they wasting so much time? And in reality, it really helped us because it kept the public interested, it kept the media interested, and it kept the pressure on the government.
Tous ces gens ont contribué au cheminement que nous avons accompli à ce jour, mais la composante la plus importante de cette équipe fut le soutien et l'implication des survivants canadiens de la thalidomide, dont certains ont eu le courage de partager leur expérience de vie dans les médias.
I think the thing I'll take away most is the strength and dignity and resilience of the Canadian thalidomide survivors.
Nobody gave up. People were motivated to help each other. It wasn't just make life better for me, but let's make life better for the whole community.
He spoke with such determination and unity, and that I think was what was so impressive about that community. They knew they had a cause that was just, and they were going to do what they could to make it happen, and they did. And they deserve all the credit for this success.
Josie Lake, Judith Pilote, Sylvie, who we lost, Bernadette Bainbridge and her family, Brigitte Corval, and Aline Vachon. And the days that we spent with these remarkable people were days I will never forget.
What I cherish the most about my experience is working with the thalidomide survivors. When you experience something that's deeply important and you work with people who have refused to give up and still have an incredibly honorable and positive attitude with great dignity about what they do, it's very inspiring. I've been a member of parliament for more than 18 years, and I remember it in my own mind as one of the most emotional days in the House. When that vote happened and we saw the survivors up in the gallery who were there to witness the vote, it was very emotional. And we all felt it, you know, it was an important moment.
Where does that moment stand for you personally in your career?
Oh, I'll never forget it.
It came out in the movie, in the film, in the video immediately. The remarkable individuals that make up that community. They're not a block of sufferers or victims, they're individual people. And I think the same is true of any community that you deal with. If you don't know them, you tend to see them just as in one way. As you get to know them, you see their individuality.
There was a survivor that came up to Ottawa. His name is Paul Haddad, and he asked me sort of, you know, why we were involved or how we got involved, and I sort of explained, kind of like I'm doing now. And then he thanked me, and I broke down because you know, you can't thank me for this. Like, this is, anybody would do this. Like, you don't need to thank me for anything. I just, I was very, very moved. So clearly I still am. We all worked really, really hard. The survivors worked really hard. Mercedes worked really hard. And today, there's a settlement of somewhere over $180 million for 94 survivors. And I say over $180 million because it's not capped. 2 years ago, there was nothing. This will be the most important thing, career-wise, at least for me, I can say, that I've ever done, and that I'm probably ever going to do. Certainly the most meaningful.
It was one of the best, it's the best experience of my life, and it's something that I will tell not only my future children, but grandkids about. I am so proud to have been part of this campaign.
This brought them back into the public consciousness. And I know now that many, many Canadians, having read about it, having heard what happened in Parliament, many parliamentarians don't look at thalidomide victims the same way. They talk to them, they don't look away.
So the story today remains, it's a positive one, but what we need to ensure is that the government follows through. The Globe and Mail continues to watch. We're continuing to look for updates on the file to make sure that the government follows through and the final settlements are given to the individuals who need them. But if there is for a moment any doubt that the government is going to follow through on that, the Globe and Mail will be there.
All of us together share in this great accomplishment to explain our situation, to be educative, to connect with the Canadian public, and to finally be understood by our government.